Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Agatavach Shvuatov. We are learning Mishna Bava Kamma, Parak Gimel, Chapter 3, Mishna Beis, Mishna 2. So we're continuing dealing with a discussion about the damaging of bor, of a pit, or creating an obstacle in a public domain. And as we have mentioned before, we'll have a number of other examples like this now, that or some examples of it now, that if you create a obstacle, whether it's still yours or not, doesn't make a difference. You're liable for it. You're responsible for it. If, let's say, you didn't make the obstacle, but it's yours, you're also responsible for it. So now, hashayfech mayim b'reshus harabim. Someone pours out water in a public space. Now, why is he pouring water, or why would he be doing that, or is he allowed to do that? But it says like that. But actually, the answer is that we're actually talking about a situation where you're actually allowed to do it. You're actually allowed to pour the water in the public domain. And that's talking about, for example, as they bring down here from the Bartanura, during the rainy season, when the ground is muddy, pouring water into a street is allowed because it makes little difference to the condition of the street. Not making much of a difference. It's muddy, it's wet anyway. So if you have this water that you have to get rid of, you can pour it into the public domain. It's not going to make much of a difference. Nonetheless, if the water that you poured into the public domain, you poured it, and someone else got damaged from it, he slipped on that water and hurt himself, then the halacha is you are liable for that injury. Even though you're allowed to put the water there, nonetheless, you are still responsible. So they have here, down here in the notes, he has to pay even though he does not want to keep the water. Okay, number one, he's pouring it out into the street. He doesn't want to keep it. But nonetheless, since he created the hazard, he's responsible for it, despite the fact that it does not belong to him. So it's really despite the fact that he was allowed to do it, and despite the fact that it's not his anymore, nonetheless, he made the obstacle, and even if he was allowed to pour the water here, he is still obligated, still responsible for any damages that he causes. And even though it's not his, doesn't matter, because he made it, he's responsible for it. So that's why we say here, he pours water in the public domain, somebody gets damaged, he is obligated to pay for the damages. Now, next case. Hamatznia es hakoitz v'saschuches. Somebody who hides a thorn or a shard of glass, that's the wording, he hides it. Now, where did he hide it exactly? So the explanation is, number one, it's in a public place. Now, again, where is he hiding? Where is he hiding it? Where is he putting it exactly? The answer is, as you just said, for example, he hid a thorn in a rickety wall that later fell into the street, and the thorn caused damage there. Since he should have realized that the wall might collapse, he is liable for the damage. So that's this case. This case where the person is hiding the thorn, or he's hiding a shard of glass. We're talking about it's in he's putting it away in a public area. Where did he put it? In a wall? Well, what's wrong with putting it in a wall? It's a rickety wall. And since it's a rickety wall, he should have realized the possibility of it's going to collapse, and therefore he took his chances. And if the wall does collapse into the public domain, and that's where these things damage someone, he is going to be responsible for it.
Is that his wall?
No.
Just on a public wall?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, next case. So that's the first case. We're going to say what the halacha is soon, but that's the first case. Next case is someone builds a fence of thorns next to a public place. That means he owned land next to a public place, and he made a wall of thorns between the two areas. Now, what's the issue here? He is liable only if the thorns protrude into the public area, and thus people might walk into them. You made this wall of thorns. The points are sticking into the public domain. People are walking by, going to get stuck by them. That's his responsibility. That's his responsibility. You shouldn't be doing that. However, if the thorns do not protrude into the public area, and someone was injured by pressing himself against them, meaning he pushed himself against the wall, the owner of the fence is not liable, because people generally do not press themselves against walls. Therefore, he was not expected to think that such damage might occur. So when you build that fence and it's protruding, and the thorns are protruding into the Rishus Harabim, so that people just walking can get stuck by them, that's your responsibility. You can't create a situation like that where people are going to get hurt. But in a situation where you didn't create a situation where they're going to get hurt, because you basically you push the fence a little bit back into your yard, so the thorns are not protruding into the public domain. So at that point, you're not responsible, because if somebody decides to press themselves or rub themselves against the wall, that's not something you have to expect, and therefore you're not liable for it. And then the next case is the Geder Shanafal Rishus Harabim. Here we're talking about you have a stone fence, regular stone fence, but it fell into a public place. And others got damaged by it. Chayiv Beniskan, he is liable to pay for their damages. Why is that? So, if it was not his fault that the wall fell, he's not considered to have created the obstacle. Nevertheless, if he retained ownership of the stones and did not remove them as soon as he could, he must pay for whatever damage they cause. Like we had before. You're not responsible if the wall fell. It was a regular wall. It was a sturdy wall. It seemed to be a sturdy wall. It wasn't rickety, and it fell. Okay, so are you at fault for the obstacles now created into the public domain? No. But if you plan on keeping those stones, then they're yours. If they're yours, you're responsible to remove them as soon as you can. And if you didn't, you'll be liable. But if, let's say, the wall fell, which wasn't your fault, and you have no intention of keeping those stones, then you're not going to be liable, because you didn't create the obstacle, and those stones aren't yours. Again, they're not your obstacle that you have to remove, and therefore, that case you'd be exempt. But our case of the Mishnah that says in all these cases that you are liable to pay for the damages. In this last case, where the wall fell, it's talking about where, although just that wall falling is not your fault, nonetheless, if you plan on retaining the ownership of those stones, now, because they are yours, that obligates you to remove them, and if you didn't, you are liable for the damages. And this last two words of being liable for damages is going on the cases that preceded, where the person hid the thorn or the shard of glass in the rickety wall and the wall fell, or the person who made his fence out of thorns and the thorns were protruding into Rishus Harabim. In those cases, you are going to be obligated to pay for any damages that they cause. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I have